Hey everybody, this is Joe. Thank you for watching my Giga Texas construction update video.
Hi everybody, welcome back to Giga Texas. It's Friday the 2nd of June, 2023. There's a lot of activity on the site today with some very interesting things to talk about in the intro and also in the video itself. Now before I get into that, a personal milestone of mine, as you can see by the image on the screen, I've now almost approached 6,000 miles of flying, or almost 10,000 kilometers of flying here over Giga Texas with my drones. And this information is actually from 2 flights ago, so it's actually much closer to those milestones than what I just talked about. For the intro, I want to start on the south side. We see some progress and some changes, specifically with the continuous flight auger drills, and the cranes have been moved over on the southeast side now, on the south side of that area, and preparing to start doing some more of the pile and pier drilling. Also, some of the geopier equipment has been moved now over near the 2 doors for stamping 2 on the south side. And finally, on the southwest side, we see some trenching going on near that angled corner of the building. And it looks like it's going to mirror exactly what we saw over on the southeast side. And it's interesting that both of the angled corners of the building on the south end are getting these trenches and water pipe. So something else just to continue to monitor. Another thing on that southwest side, at that loading platform, we see 2 interesting developments. One, a very large crate wrapped in white plastic is being moved up onto the platform. In fact, after I did the video, I noticed that it had actually been moved inside on that 3rd floor of General Assembly. In addition to that, another crane in that same area was lifting more of the solar panels that used to be stored on the south side of the cyber pond in that material staging location. They're now moving the pallets up onto the roof on that section. So I think that's another great sign that phase 2 of the solar panel installation is about to begin. Moving our way up to the north at the Megapack site, there's some developments that I want to talk about as well. First of all, more of the cable trays are being installed on the north end, and it's extending across the width of that section. Also, more of that trenches that extend from the middle part of the site up to that area and then kind of angle into where those cable trays are all under construction today. Further south from there, we see gravel is now starting to be spread onto the portion of the site that had those large parallel trenches, and where I believe the pads, the concrete pads that we've seen delivered, are going to be installed after that. And speaking of those pads, with this picture here, you can see a lot of them have now been delivered. In my previous video, we saw more trucks delivering some of these to this site, but now we can see that there's quite a bit more that have been delivered. So we're getting close to the point where we're going to see at least the foundations put in to support the Megapacks, and I'll keep an eye on whether the Megapacks arrive and let you know. The final area is over by the battery cathode plant, specifically that chiller plant. It looks like there's some trench work that's going on near that galvanized steel structure and in between where that structure is and the nitrogen generators. So a very interesting development as well. There's a lot more to see. I do cover quite a bit of ground on the video today, so make sure you watch it all the way through. As always, thank you very much for your support, and I hope you have a great weekend. Take care.
My drones are ready and raring to go. Let's go flying over Giga Texas. Well, a beautiful morning to start off here at Giga Texas on the southeast side. We're looking over the greenbelt. You'll note that there's 2 dirt roads kind of snaking in between the trees here, and they move from the bottom right over to the left of the screen, and this is a good view of both of those here. What I think this might be is 2 parts of the River Road extension that will eventually connect on the side on the left that you see here, all the way around near the Colorado River to the north end of the site on that far east side. Now here you can see the intersection, how it's starting to transform here. Looks like two lanes heading off towards the north, and that'll connect into the existing lanes on the side of the factory. And then as we turn towards the west and then the south, you'll be able to tell the two lanes that are now being constructed just south of the cyber pond. And as I pull away, this gives you a good idea of how that intersection is starting to transform. And then through the greenbelt trees, there's this clearing that we've been watching for the better part of a year. And it is part of those two that I showed you earlier that continue off to the east. So a very interesting development and something to continue to watch. As we continue to fly here on the east side, we can take a look at the parking lot with all of the trailers, the clearing near there, just to the south of that sedimentation basin with the water in it, and then also this clearing with the dirt that is normally used as storage until it's used somewhere around the site. Not a lot of activity on either of these places, and we haven't really seen that in the better part of a week. So as we continue to fly back towards the building, I want to give you just a good view here of the activity on the east side. We're on the southern part of the body in white. Through the windows you can see some of the materials and robots that have been stockpiled there, and many of them have been installed by this point in time. As we go over those two garbage chutes, we'll see quite a bit of deliveries here on the ground. Also some of the open doors into the stamping machine structure. And then here at the base of this power line tower, we see quite a bit of these white parts and also some blue wrapped items. Those blue wrap items and some of the silver look like they may be some sort of ducting. And that white platform type materials and also sort of like truss materials, I think this is still destined to go into stamping 2 on the south end, and it's part of continuing the assembly of those machines that are in that section of the factory. But very interesting to see how the deliveries are made here and then moved into that south end. As we fly over this corner of the building, on the left and center, there's quite a bit of rebar being stockpiled, also some of it being fashioned into rebar cages, some of the square ones that are used for footings, and we'll see that on the south end. And also some of them are in like rebar tubes, and those are used for the piers that the continuous flight auger system is continuing to drill. And speaking of which, the two drills, those large cranes, have been relocated here to this side of the construction site on this south end. They were stored for about 2 weeks on the west side, so this means that they're getting ready to start work here again. And we'll get some closer views of those in a minute. But on this south end, this gives you some good look at the trenching and the gravel graded section of this river road that is really starting to look like a prepared surface now. Also, on the left-hand side of the screen, there's materials that are being stored. Some of those are pallets of solar panels, and we're going to see where those are starting to be moved in a little later section of the video. So just keep that in mind. But as I turn back towards the building, this gives you a good overall view of the current state of this south end. More of the gravel is being spread around the construction site, and then here the continuous flight auger drill, the cranes, some of the materials. You can see this kind of like a pipe. I think that's all part of that continuous flight auger system, and some more rebar cages on the left. As I move towards the southeast corner of the stamping machine structure, I want to just show you the pretty much completed and filled in trenches with all of these white pipes that are sticking up. Just notice that pattern, and we're going to see it with that that diagram. We're going to see that replicated on the southeast side with some new trenching. Also here, the geopier equipment has been relocated next to these two large doors for the stamping extension. And it's hard to tell, but in the second door, it looks like there's some white large machinery that have been moved inside that section. As we continue to fly towards the center of this area, we see more of this rebar and rebar cages under work right now. Some more of the geopier equipment on the left with that yellow devices. That trailer, some more of the rebar cages stored. Those are also for those piers for the continuous flight auger system. This gravel mix is roughly showing the outline of where this building extension will be. And I think that's a good visual to kind of understand how much of this building is going to fill in this area. And then, as I mentioned, here is that trenching that is going on here on the southwest side, and this is going to mirror what we saw on the southeast side. So let's take a moment and watch some of the activity here, and then we're going to proceed over towards the temporary platform where some very interesting developments are going on right now. On top of the platform, there's this white wrapped item. It's a very large box of some sort of equipment that was just lifted up, and they're pushing it inside right now. Also on the roof, the crane is putting up a pallet of solar panels. There's more on the ground as well, and all of these, I believe, are coming from that south end where they've been stored for several months. Also looks like there's some ventilation ducting here as well. This may be the start of that phase 2 solar panel expansion across the rest of the roof. As I bring the drone back down, this gives you a good view of that large item on top of the platform being moved inside. Shortly after I passed through this area, that was already inside the building. Again, you can see 2 of those crates with solar panels right next to that red crane that says TNT on the ground. So let's continue to progress towards the north and take a look at some more of the activity on this side of the building. What's interesting here is the amount of the crushed empty crates that are being put into these dumpsters. Just shows you a lot of the equipment, some of which is on the ground here being moved in, and that's directly where part of General Assembly is being finalized for production of the Cybertruck inside. As we approach the main entrance, still not a lot of changes here, although it looks like there is some sort of poles and some work being done on the concrete on this section near where these trees are located. As I panned to the west, that Model Y with the horns is still waiting over in that landscape section, which is kind of interesting. And then here at the end of line, a few things. One, there's not a lot of cars coming out here. 2, you can see these white items. Those look like platform beams and columns. So it suggests that there's some work going on inside there. Perhaps we're going to see the end of line move again, since this was just a temporary location. As we fly further to the north along the building, we can see the knock-hog crews putting more of the plastic onto the windows to protect them for the stain work. And they will continue to apply the stain here over these receiving docks and working to the north. They're actually about 2/3 of the length of the building completed now, so it's great to see. So let's cross over the road and let's take a look at some of the developments on this side. Particularly, take a look at all of this graded location. It's expanding to the north from that material storage. Also, some gravel has been piled here, so we're going to start seeing some of that gravel mix applied on the surface soon. Also, on the left-hand side on that material storage, you can tell that most of that has been moved away now, and it's been moved to the right-hand side newer section. I think that's to allow the earthwork to continue and then extend the warehouse on wheels and that material storage location on the left further to the north. And as you can tell on the left-hand side, it's starting to take more of a rectangular shape. On the right-hand side is where they're building that road that is extending up to this part of this side of the site. This material storage location, this view is a good way to visualize where this is and located to the other two at the far south. And you can tell the work is continuing to extend the road all the way along the right-hand side of the screen next to these trees. And as I continue to pull back, you can see where some of that green has been removed, and that just suggests that the road is going to come all the way up here and connect to Tesla Road. And speaking of Tesla Road, here's a quick view of the widening and improvement that is going on here on the west side and where it connects to Farm to Market 973. This is part of that permit that was to widen and improve the right-of-way and just generally improve the traffic flow through this particular section. So as we fly over the Lone Star paving and concrete plant, look back towards the south, give an idea of how this entire west side looks, and then we'll resume the flight across the highway. The Megapack site is very busy today, and we'll start here on the north end where you can see the crews working on some of those cable trays. It's now extending towards the width of the site and also towards the north, in and amongst where we see those drill type piers that were installed in this section. Also see more trenching going on. That's going to show where those cable trays will proceed. And this suggests that we will see some sort of vertical structure in this area of the Megapack site. Now, in here we see the trench work that is kind of wide at the middle part of the site, and then it narrows down here on this north end with all of these conduits, and they're all reaching up to where those cable trays are going to be. And as I pull away towards the south, you'll see how those trenches widened up, and then they roughly follow along the two parallel paths where we've seen all of the deep foundation work with the conduit, some of those metal frames that you see, and also shortly we'll see all of the concrete pads that are going to be placed there to hold the Megapacks. This is another new development. We see the gravel mix now being spread on that center section. This is another necessary prerequisite before we can get those concrete pads on and installed, and then those will be a prerequisite for the Megapacks to be installed. And on the left-hand side of the screen, there's a good view of all of these concrete pads that have been recently delivered. And I do believe that these are going to be the foundations that the actual Megapacks are installed on. And the holes are to allow those conduit pipes to come up through from under the ground. So we will probably see those starting to be installed next week. And then hopefully we'll start seeing some Megapacks arriving soon. Okay, dropping down on this side of the power lines, you can get a good view of this trench work that is underway. This is for some of the stormwater pipe, and they're actually installing some of the concrete pipe in that particular trench. As we fly around the temporary switch yard, I wanted to give you some good views at the south end of the new permanent switch yard, where we see that temporary retaining wall with those beams and concrete sections, this large trench, and it looks to me like they've applied some concrete to the floor, and they're also installing these, I don't know if they're beams, I'm not sure if they're concrete, but they're installing these down into the base of that particular pit. And you can see there's two of them already, and then there's two of the concrete vaults and some of the pipes, possibly conduit, sticking out from there. On the top of the screen, as I pan up, the conduit is reaching underneath the power lines over to this particular area as well. So again, a lot of progress in a pretty quick way here. I think that temporary retaining wall will eventually be removed once they finish all the work in the trench, and I'm kind of curious to see what kind of structure or how this is going to look when it is completed. The switch yard itself continues to see more of that gravel mix being applied. They're now on the bottom, say 1/3 remaining, and there's several of the bulldozers moving some of that dirt, the gravel around on top of the dirt and spreading it so that it will be eventually covering the entire ground. The control room already has that gravel all the way around, and those cable tray trenches are clearly evident now along the ground, and those are very similar to the ones that we saw over at the Megapack site. Now, I noticed this on my previous video, but it looks like they're actually working on it today. They've got these, steel beams that are projecting on either side of this steel power pole, and it looks like there's more kind of angling towards the Megapack site. This is the pole that is, per the permit, related to the Megapack and the bay 3, or the easternmost bay of the electrical switchyard. So that may be some of the necessary parts to connect this over to the Megapack system. So let's fly down closer to the east parking lot and Tesla Road and see some of the activity in the trench work on this side of the site. And most of what we see here just on the north of Tesla Road is that continuing extension of the conduit. It's reaching along the road to the west, and it goes all the way over to the battery cathode and die shop complex of buildings, and then that is where how they're gonna provide power to those structures. And here's a good view of it just continuing along in that dirt section. As we fly over this old house and pan the drone back over towards the die shop, on the left center there's the conduit that continues to this particular point, and then much of it's under the ground here and then through this alleyway. You can also see some of it near the tree. And we're going to pass over to the east side of the cathode plant, and I want to give you sort of a broad view of this side of the cathode plant today. It's a large section of earthwork being prepared, so I'm going to pull the drone away to give you a good view of how this is shaping up right now. They are preparing this surface. It's running about half the length currently of the battery cathode plant, and much of the materials have already been moved inside now, so it looks like they are taking this opportunity with a clear area to prepare another graded section. So maybe it'll be a parking lot, or maybe it'll be another structure. We'll have to watch. As we pass over the cell test lab, that sort of horseshoe road right in the middle is where the conduit has already been completed. Also looks like there's been some blue equipment installed just on the west side of the cell test lab as well. And that's over near where their furnace and the HVAC was installed. I'm going to fly the drone up to the far northeast over this section. I want to just check on the progress of the removal of this hill. And it looks like no really work is being done this morning, but it's still about 1/4 of its original size, and they continue to use this dirt to fill in sections of the site all over Giga Texas. As we proceed back towards the north end of the battery cathode plant over all of this equipment and the workshops, some developments here I want to point out. One is another horseshoe road, kind of gravel mix has been put around the north end with some of those cones. Also, it looks like there's work going on the 3rd floor, and also the widened section here on the west with most of the berm now removed. I'm going to get a closer view of the work that's going on the 3rd floor. It looks like they're doing some work on this beam. They're adding something to it. It's kind of hard for me to tell for sure, but I think they're finishing this up in preparation for more of those concrete panels to be installed. Speaking of which, there's some concrete parts down on the ground waiting for installation soon. And most of this section, not only is it wider, but it's starting to clean up as far as materials. Most of those are being moved inside, which is great to see, because we know there's a lot of progress going on now that we can't see inside because of all the concrete wall panels. The roof on the die shop looks like it's mostly completed, including the interfaces between the roof and the wall segments. So that's great to see, and we can also tell that most of the trenching down here on the west side of the building is being filled out again, and based on those concrete vaults with the electrical conduit that we just passed over, it does look like some of the conduit proceeds to the north along that west side of the building. The yellow crane is still here, has not been used in several weeks, which is kind of interesting. But none of the glass has been delivered yet, so maybe it's waiting to do that. Crews are working on the east side of the concrete walls now, putting in some of the insulation strips between the concrete panels, and that helps seal it against the elements. And then as we pass over the nitrogen tanks and the vaporizers, there is some trench work with some of these green pipes being installed just next to this the galvanized steel structure. Also, most of the graded material is now on that roof section with all of those pipes sticking up. You can see some of the workers now walking on it, which is great to see that progress. Still waiting to find out what this open kind of rectangular section on this side is going to be for. So it looks like there's still some work that is yet to be completed. As I pull away here, this just gives you a good view down the alleyway and the trench work that is underway as well. As we pass along the material storage north of the warehouse on wheels, this just gives you a good view of how this section of the site appears today. Also, there's several key details that I want to show you here on this end of the site. One, you can see all of those superchargers. Those are what were brought up from the south end when they began the construction. They're still waiting for installation somewhere around the site. On this clearing, we can see this structure that they've been working on. It looks like some concrete may have been poured on the top. And again, I don't know if this is a loading dock or what its purpose, but hopefully soon we'll see what that's used for. Some of the Model Ys on this transport truck are being stored here temporarily, which is kind of an interesting thing. I'm not sure exactly why they would do that. Also, as we approach here, I did notice something new. Amongst these trailers with some of this equipment and some of those white wrapped boxes and those two Model Ys, we can see more superchargers have been delivered, at least 6 more of them. So I don't know, but it looks like these may be mobile superchargers, and we may see those being used soon. Much of that has been stored here for quite some time. The new car transportation and staging lot looks very, very busy today. Quite a few Model Ys, particularly here on the east side, and many trucks picking up the Model Ys for delivery to the rail yard up to the north near Taylor, and also some of the staging locations in and amongst Austin. The new car testing and calibration lot, it looks as always busy. But it does look like there's a few less Model Ys than we've seen in the past. As we look at the east side of the north part of Body in White, the receiving docks with those green load levelers are still unused, and then that section with the concrete removed looks like it's still being prepared for new concrete to be installed soon. As we fly up over the power lines, I want to give you just a good view looking down at this widened berm where they've been installing all of the electrical conduit along this entire section, the number of the castings that are being stored here on the east side, and also a view in those 3 small receiving doors where you can see the dirt inside. Work continues to reconfigure that entire section inside the casting machine structure. Particularly where those receiving doors are, but I can't tell how much farther inside it goes right now. As I bring the drone down, this gives you a good view of the entire east side where all of that conduit and the berm work has been taken care of. And then as we pull away, you'll see a lot of the trench boxes have been installed along that trench where those workers are. That helps prevent it from collapsing in as they're doing work. Also, some more of the trenching and a large concrete vault box has been installed. More of the conduit is on the right-hand side of the screen, and take a look at just the number of the rack mounts for the castings. I'm not sure, but you would think that if there are going to be more castings, some of them for the Cybertruck, they're going to need more of those rack mounts, and that may be what we're seeing, but that's speculation on my part. Now, what is very interesting is I noticed that on this part of the north end of the factory, we see these castings, and they're very interesting. And look at the shape, look at the design, and I won't say what I think they are. I'll leave that up to the viewer to decide, but That's a pretty good view of what those look like, and there's quite a few of them stacked here on this side. Very unusual location for castings as well. So otherwise, I'll pull away, give you an overall view of Giga Texas for today. I hope you enjoyed the video and the information that we discussed, and I also hope that you have a great weekend coming up. As always, thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. Take care.